Hi, and welcome back to entp Life. In today's video, I'm going to be going over getting an apartment in New York City. What does it take? How much do apartments actually cost here? And what was my process in getting a studio apartment in New York City? Now, the reason I'm getting a studio apartment in New York is because I'm going to be moving out of New York City and moving somewhere into location not to be disclosed just yet. I actually have a video coming out in the future that's telling you exactly where I'm going to and why I chose that area. So I'm not going to give that away just yet, but I am leaving the country. But I do have to come back and forth to New York for business and, signing of mortgages, real estate transactions, meetings with my staff here in New York for my home healthcare agency, and so on. So I need to have a small, easy apartment that I could get into that's going to be just mine, so I'm not dealing with hotels every time I'm in town. And I'm going to be renting out this property that I live in now because I don't need a house that I'm going to be living in while I'm living abroad, right? So it doesn't make sense for me to just maintain the note on this home. I'll just scale it down, get into a small apartment, and be able to use that apartment to satisfy my needs. So let's get into exactly what it takes. In New York City, you're typically going to be looking at apartments ranging from, on the low side, $1,800 a month to the sky's the limit, right? I knew that I wanted a studio apartment in the Midtown area, not necessarily Midtown proper, but I would say south of 96th Street and north of West 4th Street, right? So I consider that like kind of mainland Manhattan. Above 100th Street or above 96th Street, you start moving into Harlem and Washington Heights, and the property values go down a little bit, and the commute to Midtown gets longer and longer and longer. So I figured that I didn't want to go that far up north, and south of West 4th Street, to me, I really don't like all the named streets. I like to stay within the grid. Once I get down below West 4th, the names of the streets go from numbers to names, and it gets kind of confusing to get around. So I wanted to keep it right in like the central Manhattan area. Now, in that area, you're looking at least, like I said, at $1,800 for a studio, and that studio is going to be in a walk-up building, probably not that large, like 300 square feet, maybe 400 square feet, and you're going to be looking at one-bedroom prices of anywhere between like $2,800 for a decent apartment to about $3,500 to $3,800 if you're getting into some of the nicer, newer built apartments. And these are one bedrooms that are around 600 square feet or 700 square feet. Two bedrooms, I actually saw a two-bedroom apartment that I was considering, and this two-bedroom was actually a modified one-bedroom. So what they actually did with this two-bedroom was they had a one-bedroom apartment. The kitchen and living area was split, and they essentially eliminated the living room and turned the living room into an extra 8x10 bedroom, and they were calling that a two-bedroom apartment. And how much was that hitting for? $3,300. So I was really looking to keep my budget between that $2,000 to $3,500 price point, and I was looking to try to get as much space as possible, preferably a two-bedroom, because I have the idea that when I'm out of town, I'm going to have this property listed on Airbnb, right? So I want to be able to at least break even on my rent or turn some positive cash flow on this property while I'm not in town, right? So if I'm away for the full month and I'm able to rent out that apartment while I'm gone, at least it's paying for itself. It's not this note that I'm carrying, or it's not this rent that I'm carrying while I'm away, right? So the idea was to go for a two-bedroom. That way I can make even more money having two private rooms available rather than the studio. Well, as it turns out, I was pretty much in a rush. I decided that I was going to get the apartment about a week and a half ago, and I wanted to get the apartment for November 1st. So I saw three apartments. One was an automatic no-go because it was a doorman building, and since I do plan on Airbnb-ing this apartment out while I'm gone, I knew being in that doorman building might pose some problems because in New York City, they've been kind of cracking down on Airbnb rentals, and I was like, the last thing I need is a doorman getting up my beep for having people come in, right? So I decided no, I'm not going to go with that one. Then I looked at a studio and that 2-bedroom that I described. And when I walked into the 2-bedroom, I said, okay, this can work for me because it's the space that I need. And in talking to the agent, he told me that it wouldn't necessarily be a good building for Airbnb because the landlord has cameras up and they're really trying to discourage that. But he had another property, the studio, that was on the Upper East Side that he said would be potentially a better fit. Now, when I went up there to check out the studio, this studio was priced at $2,300 a month. And I'm going to show you some video of what that studio looks like. But it was priced at $2,300 a month. And I figured, hey, you know what? It's going to work out. When I'm there, maybe I break even, maybe I make a little bit of money. But it's going to work for me. It's on 71st Street. It's near the subway lines. It's desirable for people who are looking to stay in New York, okay? So I'm thinking that I should be able to rent out this apartment for about $150 a day on Airbnb. That seems to be about the median price for an apartment like this. It's a private apartment. It's not just a room. It's not shared. So people are going to pay that. And it's a lot cheaper than what you would pay for a hotel. That's for sure. Actually, let's go check out this apartment. Alrighty, so we're trying to get set up in here. This is the apartment that I was telling you about. And I'm just going to give you a quick walkthrough to show you exactly what $2,300 a month gets you here in New York City. It's pretty laughable. So let's go for the grand tour. It's going to take about 30 seconds. So walking on in, what we have here is just the living area. So I'm just getting all the decorative items in the house. But it's literally about maybe 18 feet deep. Got baby Monica over here chilling. Hello. We have this brick wall here, and show you the massive kitchen. You know, so 24-inch stove. I don't even think this is 24. It might be 20. And you get a little fridge, one closet area. This is one closet. And here's the bathroom, clean and all. And here's the other closet in the bathroom. And here's the bathroom. Bathroom is fairly updated and clean. It's, you know, nothing special, but nothing bad either. And that's your luxury studio apartment. As you can see, it's not much for $2,300, right? That, you know, you could get a 4,000 square foot home in most suburban areas in New York City for $2,300 a month, right? And own it. Not in New York City, in the country, and own it, right? So, you know, when you see these prices, it's actually kind of comical. But I want to talk to you a little bit about what that process was besides just viewing the property, okay? So in New York City, you're either going to be working with a broker or with a building owner that's not going to charge you a broker's fee, okay? The brokers sometimes are getting a brokerage fee from the building, depending on how things are structured. And if they're not, that brokerage fee is going to be equal to about 1 month's rent, okay? So to move into this studio with a broker is going to cost you $6,900, right? So, you know, when you look at that number and you think about, well, I could actually put down 3.5% on a $100,000 home in a lot of places in the United States and actually buy something, right? So, you know, that's the first funny bit, $6,900 to move in. Okay, great. Now, I agree to the $6,900 and decide that we're going to move forward and start the application process. Now, this application process is no different, I swear to you, than applying for a mortgage. They asked me to fill out an application, credit check. They needed to see that I was making 40 times the rent in my W-2 income. They wanted my tax returns to justify that. They wanted recent pay stubs, and they wanted a verification letter from my employer. Now, I'm self-employed. Fortunately for me, in my company, I have myself down as a W-2 employee. The money that I earn in my company is more than enough to pay the 40 times rent. But there were still questioning aspects of my income, right? Why is my deduction as large as it is? And why is my net income, after all of my deductions across all the companies and real estate depreciation. Why is it what it is? Are you able to afford this rent? And I was like, dude, I make way much more than than the 40 times. And if you want to take a closer look at my financials, we could go into that. But there was a lot of back and forth questioning what my earnings were, am I able to afford it? And then the broker had to go back to the building manager and have these items verified, right? Now, this would be no different than getting approved for a mortgage, right? If I'm going for a hard money loan, it's the same thing. If I'm going to Visio Lending, right, the guys that I use for my refinances, typically, they don't even ask for that much information. They don't even care about my personal income. So going through this process really made me chuckle because I said getting an apartment in New York City is actually more expensive and more tedious than getting a home in the majority of the United States. Buying a house in the majority of the United States is cheaper and potentially easier than getting an apartment in New York City. So if you're going to be coming into New York City and you're looking to get an apartment, here's a few things that you should keep in mind. Number one, make sure that your income is going to be at least 40 times your rental amount, your monthly rent, right? So if your monthly rent is going to be $3,000 a month, your income should be $120,000, or else the landlord and the brokers are going to be squeamish on lending to you, right? It sounds like a lot of money, but here in New York, it's feasible to earn that money as a professional here, right? So that's number one. If you're solo, if it's going to be a couple or a family, then obviously all the workers can pool their income together and show that they're able to afford that rent, right? So that's the first thing that you want to keep in mind. Another thing that you want to keep in mind is, are you going to want to deal with that broker's fee, right? It's a pretty heavy fee considering the rents, right? You're paying an extra month. Now, the pros and cons to the broker fee is that the broker's out there and typically has some relationships with the building owner or building management and can kind of push your application through if they're directly representing that landlord. There's a lot of agents that are just showing apartments, anything that's listed, that's offering a broker's fee, and then it becomes like this mad dash or this rush to try to qualify a bunch of different people for the same apartment. If you're dealing with a broker who controls the listing, it's better to go directly to that broker. They're able to process their applicants a lot faster, a lot easier, rather than some sort of outside agent trying to show that listing, right? So you'll find that agents kind of keep their listings to themselves, and that's kind of typical, right? They don't want to have to share broker's fees or pay out a broker fee out of their management fees, etc. So I tend to try to work directly with whoever is listing the property, if there's a fee, if there's not a fee, just to avoid kind of falling in the backlog or getting stalled out, right? They're able to call the owner, make sure leases are generated. It was a really, really quick process once we started getting going and we got past their due diligence process of vetting me as a potential tenant. So make sure that you have your financials straight away and that you're working directly with the people who are representing the building, right? If you start using a third party, that broker is going to be of service to you because they're going to be looking at a ton of listings and trying to move you along so that you get yourself into something. Things move really quick here in the city, so you don't want to really kind of stall. The stall tactic does not work. There might be 4 or 5 people applying for the same apartment at the same time, especially if it's priced really well. There's going to be a mad dash for that. If there's no broker's fee as well, there's going to be a lot of people looking to get themselves into that apartment. Now, another thing that you're going to want to consider when you're looking at getting an apartment here in the city is, where do you want to be, right? I prefer to be like really close to subway lines, 2 to 3 blocks. And the reason for that is I don't really like walking too far. It gets cold, it gets windy, and when the winter is rolling around, which is something that I'm adamantly trying to avoid, I want to just get into the subway as quickly as possible so I could seek shelter, right? Or if I'm carrying things, I don't want to have to carry them too far. So being really close to the subway is a premium in my opinion, and there's subways all over town, but you'll find that there's properties that are like all the way on the east or west side that are far away from trains, and by far away I mean like 7 blocks, 6 blocks. That starts to become like a long ways for a subway in New York City. So you want to make sure that you're closer to the subways. Another thing that you want to make sure is that your credit's in good shape. It's something the landlords are treating their transactions seriously. And they're doing this because for each person that they're applying, that they're leasing their apartments out to, they're keeping really good records because a lot of these owners are pushing their property values up by increasing rents and by forcing that appreciation. So when they're getting refinances and they're working with their banks to cash out more money from their property, their banks are going to say, I want to look at your lease mix. What's the average rent? Are these A quality tenants? Are they current? Are they making money? Do they have good credit, et cetera? So your credit profile being strong is also going to help you be considered. Now, this is a new thing for me because I've never had an apartment on Airbnb, and I may document exactly what that process has been like for me and show you exactly what it is. This property here, I'm even flirting with the idea of putting it on Airbnb. It's a waterfront home in Nassau County. I think it'll do really well in the summertime, but I don't think it's going to do so well during the winter. So I'm kind of on the fence as to whether or not I should put this on Airbnb or if I should just rent it at market rates, right? So if you have any suggestions, just leave that in the comment section below. I'd love to hear back from you and think, what would you do? If you had this property right on the water, would you rent it out just to a family, or would you try to put it on Airbnb to squeeze just a little more cash flow out of it? Another thing that I'm going to be showing is setting up my Airbnb account and showing exactly what is the potential earnings on that property in New York City. If it works out really well, I might just put that as one of my little cash flow strategies, right? Where I could park up $7,000, $8,000 into getting an apartment going, and then maybe cash flow $1,000 or $1,500 a month, right? That would be a pretty good rate of return on a $7,000 investment, right? That may be a good strategy that some of you guys may use if you're trying to build up some additional income or some cash flow. Or if you're looking to house hack and hack your apartment so that maybe you have a 2-bedroom apartment, you're leasing out one of the rooms, and that additional room is completely paying for your entire property, right? That might be a strategy that you want to use so that you're able to, 1, live in a nice location, and 2, start stacking your money so that you're saving money to invest in more real estate. Once again, thank you for joining me at ENTP Life. I hope this video was enjoyable and you got a chance to see exactly how crazy it is to rent an apartment here in New York City, how much things cost, and so on. If you're interested in seeing more of my journey in pushing out a Airbnb property, also let me know that in the comment section below. Any questions, comments are more than welcomed. I love engaging with you guys. And if you're not already a subscriber, please take the time out, hit that subscription button. There's tons of information to learn here. We're mostly talking about real estate investing and trying to break free from that routine life and getting out of your comfort zone, right? Being able to live the pleasurable life that you've always wanted and being able to do so by generating cash flow from real estate investments. Once again, thank you, take care, see you in the next one.